And the people didn't know what to do. Well, Mike's back. What does that mean? Is he in the same role that he was in before, or is Bill continuing to take over? So it became very stressful for them as well. And I guess the analogy that I've used to people is Bill had jumped in the driver's seat of the car, and he's cruising down the freeway. And there were a lot of times where I didn't like where we were going. So I kind of reached over and grabbed the steering wheel and tried to take us to it and yanked it to the off-ramp. And he's looking at me, what are you doing?
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. I can tell you, I've been waiting to have Mike on the show. So we have a slew of shows recorded during this time frame, and Mike is I think the only local guy. So
only
you didn't,
local.
You just had hopefully a short drive in. But thanks for coming in. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Spending some time on the show. So some might actually know Mike. Mike is actually a certified exit planning advisor, but he's also an exited owner and an entrepreneur, and that's really kind of what I wanted to talk through on the show with. We don't have a lot of exited owners. You know Mike Fisher?
I do.
Yeah, Mike Fisher was on the show last year. So
that's going to be a tough act to follow.
And it's a tough act to follow for sure. So I wanted to kind of dive in and from an owner's perspective talk about the stuff that we always talk about in the EPI community, all the exit planning stuff. So kind of let's dive into it a little bit. So you've been a part of our family's life for a long time. You've worked with my dad a little bit. My dad's worked, I guess, for you as an advisor, and then you helped me out. We're reminiscing on the M&S Connection landscaping signs and pictures that are in our studio, and we had a landscaping job at your place way back when as well. So you've seen me kind of grow up, I guess. Right?
I saw you as a college student doing yards and driving a truck
to professional individual
soccer club owner.
I guess, soccer club owner.
I think this is my 20th anniversary with your dad.
Is it really?
Yeah, I actually was just talking about it earlier, so I think it's been 20 years that I met Chris.
So 20 years ago, I would have been 18, man. You would have seen me in high school or first year of college.
First year of college, I think you were in.
Wow. So we go way back. So it's cool to kind of come full circle and get the picture side by side. I'm probably making your dad jealous a little bit, too, of hanging out with you.
It is.
So take me back now. I guess it would have been 24 years ago when you started your first company, 2000, right? 2000?
Yep, 2000 it was.
And you got laid off and then said, what, screw it, I'm going to start this company?
No, actually, I call it fired. I think laid off
is
this
the nice way to put it?
That's
what the article says?
Better. Yeah. So 2000, working at a consulting company, and somebody came to me, one of my managers came to me and said, hey, Mike, what would you like to do? You could do project work, you could be a client manager, or you could be in delivery.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I'd like to do all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, you can only do one. And I thought for a couple seconds. I said, well, I'd like to do all of them.
Yeah.
And then probably within the week, I got a message at home said, show up at work, 7 o'clock in the morning. And we started going through exit interviews, and I was the first wave of firings at a company called Whitman Hart.
Oh.
And for some reason in the exit interview, I just asked them if they would just excuse my 4 customers from my non-compete agreement. So that's what they did. They said, sure.
Oh, they did? They allowed you to do that? Wow.
They allowed me to do it, so I became one guy, 4 clients, and 1 laptop in May of 2000.
Out of your home?
Out of my home, a solid 72-square-foot office.
Yep.
And that's how it started.
And so where'd you come up with the name, Bright Skies?
Bright Skies was an interesting thing. Back in 2000, there was all these weird name companies like Google and Yahoo and Blue Martini.
Sure.
So I wanted to call the company Blue Skies, which is a business term. Everything's going well.
Yep.
No URLs available, so I started doing a wordplay on Bright Skies. I like sunshine and this and that, and then Bright Skies became what it was.
Yeah, what it was. It was cool, too, to kind of see the renditions of your logos, too. I think I saw it on the website, too. You have a cool history page. So it's kind of see the evolution of who you were.
Half the first ones were drawn by me in my best Photoshop skills.
Yeah, right?
So they've come a long way.
So tell us about the company. What kind of stuff did you guys do?
Well, we were an IT consulting company. We focused on mid-market to large companies, so anywhere 50 million to a couple $1 billion. And we just wanted to do it better than everybody else.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of websites back then, point of presence websites. We did a lot of AS400 software integration. And most of it was done locally in Northeast Ohio with some lily pads off into other environments. So it was a fun time, and the teammates that we had on the team, they were the best. I mean, I still talk to a lot of them today.
Cool.
And I miss the journey.
Miss the journey. So let's talk about that journey. So when I was prepping for the show and obviously in knowing you as well, I'd say you had a 16-year run before you sold Bright Skies.
Correct.
But I always say when I'm looking at your story, there's like two halves. All right. So the first half for me is just the first, say, decade of getting it off the ground from the 4 clients, 1 guy, and a laptop in a 72-square-foot office to multiple employees, multiple clients, and assumingly a larger office than 1 bedroom, right?
Yes.
So talk to me about that journey of growth over the first decade of launching. How'd you grow? What were some struggles? What did that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, no one's ever asked it to me before.
Really?
And as an IT geek that always worked in-house, I never really knew what to expect. I was an entrepreneur by accident, I guess you would call it. I just happened to ask the right question. I never really planned on it.
That's true. Yeah, that's interesting.
No formal training, no business skills.
Did you go to college for like computer science, IT?
I did. I was a computer geek at Youngstown State.
Yeah.
So as I've always said, you could take the boy out of Youngstown, but you can't take Youngstown out of the boy.
Yeah.
So, but the first years were great. I mean, it was all a new experience. It was a life-changing experience. It was a hustle. It was 60, 70 hours a week.
Of course.
Trying to figure out when you hire somebody or when you bring in a buddy to be as a contractor.
Yeah.
So we started off with, actually, I brought in a friend of mine, Bill Onion.
Okay.
And it became 2 guys, 2 laptops, and a couple clients. And we started, and we would trade the printer to print invoices. 1 month he'd print invoices, 1 month I'd print invoices, and we'd carry a giant laser printer from his bedroom to my bedroom across the city of Cleveland. And so we just started growing and adding people. We ended up with an office downtown. Somehow I stumbled into the landmark office tower Republic building, and somebody from COSI, Terry Cantrell, took me over.
Yeah.
We asked if anybody in the building might want to sublease some space, and Wise Advertising brought us in.
Yeah.
And that's when we moved downtown, and that's as we started to grow.
That has to be, that's a milestone moment for
It
sure.
was, and Mark Wise was a fantastic mentor of mine.
Yeah.
He knew everybody in Cleveland, so it was nice to be with Cleveland royalty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think, too, we joined COSI, and COSI really did a good job. I ended up on their board, and I ended up in some events that I shouldn't have been in. I was on a Greater Cleveland School Growth Association with the who's who of Cleveland, with the Ratners, the Mixons, the LaRues, the law firms, Jerry Sue Thornton, and I was just a 29-year-old kid sitting in a room with a bunch of people who've already made it. So, So the growth and the excitement and the experience was amazing.
What do you contribute some of the growth to? All those kind of awesome networking opportunities that you had and getting the name out? Were you doing projects and they were referring more work? Like, how'd you start to tick in that direction?
It was all of the above.
Yeah, fair.
We had some great customers.
Yep.
Of the 4 customers that I started with, 3 of them stayed with us almost till exit. 2 of them absolutely stayed to exit. Yeah. So they really helped stabilize things.
Yeah.
We leveraged a lot of our previous relationships.
Sure, absolutely.
With some of the bigger companies like Applied Industrial Technologies, Myers Industries. And so that was interesting, right?
Yeah.
And people just got to know us.
Yeah.
And we did a very specific thing. We did it very well. The biggest reason we grew was because of our people.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's kind of a theme on the show, too, when I bring in folk like our advisors and other owners. The people and culture is absolutely critical. How many people did you have at Point of Exit? You remember? At
Point of Exit, we were around 36 to 40, plus some subcontractors.
So you're like the size that like we are, right? So we'll hit probably 36 people. And maybe an interesting question for me It's been honestly a really challenge in going from 5, right, to talk about Mike Fisher. So one of the reasons I had Mike on the show too, another guy that has been a great mentor to us, just like you, he gave us our first official office. So I was working out of like Dad's, like the spare bedroom at the house when we first bought EPI, and it was just me, right, me and Dad.
Right.
And then we moved the business officially. We had Dennis. I don't know if you ever remember, if you were around in the Dennis era, where he was our executive director, working out of Chicago, where EPI was originally headquartered. Right. And then we moved everything to Cleveland, and Dad said, "Hey, I need you to go in and run this thing and fulfill the growth strategy that we had." So we let Dennis go. We moved everything to Cleveland. I said, "Dad, I need a couple employees if we're going to do this right." And he's like, "Well, we'll just set up the basement." I was like, "Dad."
You mean the same basement where we did the gift exchange?
The same basement where the Christmas party is, the gift exchange, the plentiful drinks that we have, the pool table. And I said, "Dad, there's no way that these 2 females, our event coordinator or office manager, are going to drive into Strongsville and report to Dad's basement. That's just not going to work." And we didn't have a lot of money. So Fisher had just sold his company, and he said, "I still own the building that we have."
Yep.
And we moved in to those offices. And I can tell you, though, from going to the 3 of us in those offices to the near 36 of us today here in Westlake, Ohio, it's been odd. And one recent story for us, it's my office overlooks our parking lot. I don't know if you've ever felt this way. Our office overlooks our parking lot, and the tradition is on the first day that new people start, we take them out to lunch, and we have like a long lunch, like 2-3 hour lunch. Yep. We're just breaking bread, and we might have a drink and just cutting loose and getting to know them as people and share kind of our culture. And we had a couple of people start just the other month, and I see like 2 teams, our operations team and our marketing team, which is like 2 teams of 6, walking out all chummy, in the office. And I'm like, where the hell? There's 12 people, right? 2 different teams. I'm like, where the hell is everybody going? And I realized in that moment, I was like, oh, our director of marketing and our operations manager, Paige, and then Jocelyn, are taking their new folks out to lunch. But they didn't invite me. And so it was like a moment for me, both happy and sad, where I'm like, we're growing to the point where, the relationships are with, their employees, the relationships with Jocelyn or Paige, they're not with me. And I'm like 3 times removed now. It's just been a really weird thing. Do you have similar experiences when you went from you and Bill to 30-something people?
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
Meaning, and I think your philosophy and my philosophy aligned. We tried to make the first day the best day.
Exactly right.
So we would send home a bottle of wine or champagne for the spouse.
Yeah.
We would have cookies and balloons. We made sure that the laptop was there, the cards were ready.
Yeah.
So that we wanted to have a wow first day. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, the wow first day was Mike and or Bill organizing everything.
Yep.
And then by the end, the wow first day was Stephanie made sure everything happened, and Rosie made sure everything happened. And they were like, "Oh, we're going to lunch if you can make it."
Yeah, right.
And so that's it's different, right? And
it is.
And we also noticed that the people act different because there were some people that started with us in the beginning.
Yeah, right.
And their relationship was specifically with us.
Right.
And as that relationship kind of stretched, it became different.
Yeah.
So it was interesting growth, but it was fun growth.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
And you manage the churn a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's harder to connect with everybody.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine what it's like to grow further, faster, longer.
Yeah, further, faster, longer. Like, we were talking about this. We're supposed to go to 54 people in the next 3 years. So I'm anxious to see, how
you have your flywheel moving.
Yeah, right. So the other thing that I noticed in a little bit of show prep too is that I knew you were involved in EO, but you've been involved in EO for a long time. For our audience, if you don't know, it's the Entrepreneurs Organization. So I think Cleveland is actually one of their larger or largest chapters. And there's a lot of mentors of mine that have utilized EO to grow. And if you look at some of our state of owner readiness research, a lot of our owners are marking that when they're asked who's your most trusted advisor, it's actually one of the top 5. They're not necessarily marking a specific advisor. They're saying my owner peer groups.
Yes.
So you joined that, I think, like 4 years after you started your company and have been involved ever since. So has that been, for those of you that are in EO, for those of you that are interested in EO, has that been an influence for you?
Tremendous.
It has.
So Well, you mentioned Mike Fisher. That's where I met him.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I met Mike Fisher in EO at an event in Montreal.
Oh.
So we spent time at a conference in Montreal together in 2006.
Yeah.
One of my close friends now, who was my sales coach, got me in. So Keith Strauss from Sales Concepts.
Oh, wow. I haven't seen Keith in years.
He had his office right here in Westlake, and he's
Yep.
like, "You need to sign up."
Yep. Yeah.
And I said, "Well, how much does it cost?"
Well,
Right?
yeah.
And he's like, "It's expensive, but you're going to do it anyhow." And so I think I stroked my $3,500 check.
Yeah,
I
right.
went through orientation with them. I ended up in a small forum group, we call it in EO.
Yep.
And my forum group was fantastic. And without them, I don't think we would have grown over the years. And
Yeah, so your EO experiences in that forum group has certainly contributed to your business growth.
Absolutely. Without them, I think I've been in EO 21 years now.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
still stroke my $5,000 or $6,000
Do you really?
check to be in EO, and I'm not sure why, but I can't.
You can't get away from it.
I
It's
can't get away
that
from
impactful
it.
for
It's
you.
that impactful, and then it really helped me go globally. So
interesting.
EO gave me the chance to travel the world.
Yeah.
And meet entrepreneurs from all over the world, which is kind of interesting. Like if you know Nando Parado,
Yeah.
the live,
Yeah.
the Uruguayan soccer team
Yeah.
that crashed in the Andes. I've met him twice. I've watched him speak. I met Jimmy Chu
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Malaysia.
Yeah.
I've made good friends in Australia, so I've stayed at people's houses. We've been in Africa. We've been in safaris.
Yeah,
so
man.
there's the journey of entrepreneurship and business ownership is often better than the outcome. It was better than the money. It was better than everything.
Yeah.
And so I give them a credit. I would have never exited the company without my forum group.
Wow.
They gave me
Hugely impactful.
they gave me the inspiration that I needed to
execute that.
actually get done.
Yeah,
To
right.
land the plane.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I would highly recommend Entrepreneurs Organization or some peer group like that
I agree.
to
Yeah.
any growing entrepreneur.
Yeah. No, I think again from the studies, it's a question that we get a lot inside of the EPI world, or how owners are influenced. And so you got a live owner sitting right here, right, that said, yeah, it was impactful from the time I started the company all the way through exit. And so for our advisors listening in too, how can we play off that as well, and how can we combine and work and engage with business owner peer groups that are helping owners grow and eventually exit? So you have a great 10 or 11 year run at Bright Skies, and then you have a health issue, right? Which
Yep.
I think changed your world, right? For maybe better or worse, or both, a little bit of both. So 2000, I think it was 11. You have a health issue that takes you out of the game for months. So talk about that story.
So I have Crohn's disease. I've had it since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
No one really, we knew that I had it, but
Yeah.
we really didn't talk about.
Okay.
So I had always been told, hey, if you spike a fever, you need to go to the hospital.
Okay.
So, it's a great thing to hear, but not
Yeah.
necessarily to execute on. And so my wife and I, it was interesting. We had just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So we flew to Bora Bora for our 10th anniversary,
Nice.
which is heaven on earth.
Yeah.
It's my favorite place I've ever been. We stopped in Vegas on the way back. I went to an EO event in Houston.
Of course you did.
So I got to see the Jean France from one of the Apollo missions speak.
Yeah.
And I was on a high. Bright Skies was rolling after 11 years. We were we were almost at our highest point ever, and everything was positive. And I received a call from a friend of mine whose dad crashed, his heart stopped. They life flighted him to Cleveland. They brought him up in the clinic. So I met him there with some clothes, and I spent the day at the clinic. And I woke up in pain the next day.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
Yeah.
I woke up in pain.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, can you get this at the hospital?
Yeah. Whoa.
But it was a byproduct of my Crohn's disease, so not to get too gory
sure.
here, but
Yeah.
my bladder was connected to my small intestine, which isn't really cool.
Yeah.
But the guy, Keith Strauss, that we mentioned,
yeah.
I used to send him pictures of my green leafy vegetables in my urine samples. So
Oh,
it
my
was kind of
gosh.
brutal. But anyhow, that weekend, we were supposed to go visit my parents on Easter morning.
Okay.
And I had a pain in my groin, and my neighbor said, take Tylenol, sit in a tub. So I drew a hot bath, I jumped in the tub, and I started flopping around like a fish.
Oh, no.
So I called my wife. She hoists me out of the tub, puts me back in bed, takes my temperature, and I'm at 106.5 degrees. And I'm like, I'm good. I just got the flu. I'll go to bed.
Stubborn man.
Stubborn man.
Didn't you say your parents grew up telling you if you ever spike a big fever to go
No,
to
that
the
was a
hospital?
doctor.
Oh, that was a doctor?
Right.
Okay,
But
fair.
I also learned at 106.5 degrees, your mind doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah, you're delirious.
I'm
for sure.
delirious. So she did put me back in bed. Monday morning rolls along, and my parents drive up from Youngstown. They take me to the ER, and I had been septic for 3 days. So that was the beginning of the end. And the short version of a longer story is I ended up having a 9.5-hour surgery a week later at the Cleveland Clinic to remove half my intestinal tract, fix my bladder. I ended up losing a kidney out of the deal. I spent 30 days in the hospital. I came out with, and I talk about this a lot to people who can help, but an ostomy bag.
Yeah, of course.
A urostomy and an ileostomy. So the great news is you could pee and poop into bags.
Yeah, right?
So it was a little bit of a rough time. My kid, Bruno, who was 2.
I was going to say, Bruno's young at this point.
Yeah, he's 2.5.
Yeah.
And he was I said he saved me.
Yeah?
Because I would look forward to seeing him, and then in the summertime, he'd come home.
Yep.
We'd watch Mickey Mouse Playhouse.
Yep.
I would strap on my ostomy bag or whatever,
Yep.
and we'd go out for a walk around the block. So it was really all for him.
Yeah, of course.
As we got through, my wife was a rock star. My family was a rock star.
Yeah.
But the weird part for business owners is I didn't expect this to happen, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
I was in work on Friday, left to go see my friend's dad in the hospital, and by Monday, I'm in the hospital bed.
Right.
And my business partner, Bill, at that time, because I brought him into the business, he ends up meeting me at the hospital, and we signed a health power of attorney.
In the hospital?
Yeah, he co-signed it, right? I said, hey, Bill, I don't know when I'm coming back. The ship is yours.
Oh, my gosh.
And, so he took the helm of the ship, and I was out about 4 to 5 months.
Because you had the initial 30 days.
I had the initial 30 days.
And then you had a bunch of recovery time.
And then I had to get rid of all these bags, and they had to reconnect my intestinal tract, and then we did the reintegration. And I think you and I talked about it.
Yeah.
The reintegration part is something that we should have planned for but didn't.
Yeah, I thought that was, I was reading an article that was about your journey here, and you said, like literally, quote, "It's important to plan for the exit, but it's also important to plan for your return." And I guess I didn't really think about like a big return like that being away for 3 or 4 months. So, as you know, back in February, I got married, and I was gone for 3 straight weeks. I had never taken maybe a week away, but not 3 straight weeks. So I could only imagine coming back after 4 or 5 months. And the company, I think you said, did fine, right? Like it was performing, your people stepped up. And
we were performing. We had some
hiccups along the way.
We had some hiccups along the way. Your dad was on our Chris
true.
was on our advisory board, and Jim Smith was on our advisory board. So we had some hiccups along the way, but at that point I didn't care.
Well, you're just trying to get better.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't care about the business at all. It didn't even
like pick up the email or the phone or
I
nothing.
didn't do anything. I was a ghost for 5 months.
So I guess before we talk about the return, how did your people step up? Like so Bill has to kind of take over.
So yeah.
And that's got to be kind of wild to say like, look, I mean, Mike's not coming back anytime soon, so we got to get going here.
Yeah, so Mike ceded the throne, and Bill became temporary king. A lot of my staff, so the interesting thing about Bright Skies is we kind of had Bill's clients and Mike's clients.
Okay, yeah.
That's how we were salespeople, so we had the relationships.
Right.
And so the wonderful thing about my clients never missed a beat.
Okay.
Because of the team I had in place, the Nathans, the Bills, the Mikes, the Bobs, everybody, the Matts.
They stepped up.
They stepped up, right?
Yep.
And nobody missed a beat.
Sounds like very loyal people too. Great culture, great people.
The best. And so they really stepped up.
Yep.
Bill had to pick up a lot more of the slack.
Yep.
But we made it through, right? And as I said, you can never plan when the yellow bus is going to come by and run you over.
Yeah.
But you should be ready for the yellow bus.
Yeah.
Because it could happen to any one of us any day.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about it in our SEPA training as the 5 Ds, right? You've certainly have experienced disease, right?
Disease.
So then let's talk about the return then. So now you're 6 months in or whatever it is, and you're ready to come back to work. Has the company changed? Is it like a little bit different of a place? Has it lost any of like the culture or vibe that you left it with? What's it like? I could tell you it was weird coming back after 3 weeks. Company did good when I was gone. And when I was standing at my first company-wide meeting just outside of our studio here, it was kind of like, well, okay, Scott's back on the podium, back at the throne, and we've been following like Paige and Jesse's lead for the last 3 weeks. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, it was super weird.
Yeah.
Not only for myself and Bill,
Yeah.
but everybody. Because prior to me leaving, I had founded the company, and a lot of people associated Bright Skies with Mike.
you. Yeah.
Then 6 months later, as Bill has been the head of it, there was a Mike and Bill struggle. Like, where do we fit in? How do we get along?
Right.
We're different human beings. We're not similar in many ways. We have similar values, but personality-wise, we're significantly different. And the people didn't know what to do. Well, Mike's back. What does that mean? Is he in the same role that he was in before, or is Bill continuing to take over? So it became very stressful for them as well. And I guess the analogy that I've used to people is Bill had jumped in the driver's seat of the car, and he's cruising down the freeway.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of times where I didn't like where we were going. So I kind of reached over and grabbed the steering wheel and tried to take us to it and yanked it to the off ramp. And he's looking at me, what are you doing?
Right.
He's like, you just got back. I'm on my journey.
Yeah, right.
And so
interesting.
It was great to be back.
Yeah.
But it wasn't great to be back.
Yeah.
We had a kick butt party.
Yeah.
Down at the House of Blues, and we had a casino night.
Yeah.
It was probably the greatest party that Bright Skies ever threw for our employees and families. But it was probably one of the last hurrahs of the deal.
Really?
So after that point, that's when the relationship between Bill and I, we had a lot of turbulence.
Yeah.
And that turbulence caused alignment issues within the company, alignment issues within us.
Yeah, right.
And so that is kind of the, that coming back to work, the 2011, 2012. And the interesting part is in 2012, somebody offered to buy us and we weren't ready. And so I referenced this today with our friend Jim Smith, is that would have probably been the most profitable exit in 2012. But we weren't prepared for that exit, right? Yeah. As I've said numerous times, in the old book.
Yeah.
They page 50 and 51.
Yeah, the timelines.
The timelines. I wasn't ready for the timeline.
I know.
And in 2012, that would have been the day that we were on the hockey stick still growing. The market was right.
You probably weren't even, you weren't thinking about exit. Well, think about even exit planning in us 10 years ago, man. Like, we had just, bought EPI. Right. So, the value acceleration methodology, owners back then weren't really exposed to exit strategy as business strategy.
No, and that's this value acceleration methodology.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to get all these acronyms. But the interesting part is Chris came in and did one of his first assessments ever. Was on Bright Skies.
It's super interesting.
And so he took us through the whole process.
Yeah.
He provided us the reports we went over. I still remember where we were sitting and going around, and you could see the disconnect between Bill and I.
Oh, right.
Chris saw it. We saw it by our answers, our ratings, that we weren't in alignment.
That's critical.
And so it was a very pivotal moment.
Pivotal moment. So I want to get into the second half, right?
Yeah.
So you go 11 years, you have Bright Skies for 16, so there's 4 or 5 more years left. Maybe to your point, a little turbulent, and then we get to the exit point. So we're going to get to that right after a short break. So stick with us, and we'll be right back. Thanks.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny. 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So we talked about the first decade of Bright Skies, Mike's company. And now, in fast forward, I think it was basically 4 or 5 years after that, I think it was 2016, you sell at least your shares, I guess you could say, of Bright Skies. So a little bit unique of an exit because you and Bill both didn't get out, right? We have a lot of people on the show, like Mike, for example, who just sell outright to a strategic. So talk about now your exit after 4 years of getting back from your health issue.
Yeah, so it is an interesting story, right?
Is.
It's a difficult story. As I said, Bill and I started having a turbulent time.
Right.
It's no fault of Bill's. It's no fault of mine, right?
Yeah.
Things changed.
Yeah, drastically. And so as we progressed, it became a little bit more obvious. Like our growth strategies changed, our opinions changed. We started differing. People started noticing it in the office. And so I had always planned on exiting at some point in time. Sure.
Just because I've never stayed anywhere for as long as I have stayed.
As long as you did there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, Bill and I came up with roles in the company where I was more externally focused.
Okay.
He was more internally focused. So he handled more operations. I handled more outwardly focused outreach type stuff.
Yeah.
So as part of that, I had identified a company in Chicago that was very similar to us, bigger than us, called Gorilla Group. And I thought we would be a really nice tuck-in for them.
Yeah.
We could take our 40 people, 40, 50, whatever we were at the time, and we would roll them into their 180 people.
Right.
Give them a boost.
That's a big boost.
Bring some big customers in. So, I had hatched a plan. And I ended up, I was told by everybody, use a broker. Use a broker. You have to use a broker.
Yep.
I'm more of a do-it-myself kind of
a
jack of all
little
trades guys.
DIY,
I know lots of owners are.
Yeah.
But I was determined I was going to use a broker. So this broker had called me, and he wanted to make an introduction to the CEO, Brian Grady of Gorilla Group. And I said, go ahead and
done deal.
Done deal.
Yeah.
But I was too small of a deal for this broker to do. So
Oh.
he didn't really, he's like, this is below my thing.
Yeah, it's a little threshold.
So
or
a
whatever.
little threshold.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, I'll just do it myself.
So I'd reached out to Brian, and I told a little white lie. I hope Brian never sees this, but I said, hey, I'm going to be in Chicago.
Yeah.
Love to stop by and meet you in person.
Yeah. But you weren't actually going to be in Chicago.
I wasn't actually going to be in Chicago.
You were going to drive there, though, if he took your meeting.
Yeah, he says, well, we can meet. So I booked a day at Oracle, just west of Chicago,
Yeah.
and I went into Chicago.
Yep.
And I met with Brian. We started a conversation. It started to make sense. And at that point, it was a conversation about him buying the entire company.
Yeah.
That was the whole goal.
Yeah.
It was an exit for me and Bill.
Yep.
I thought it was a nice way for us to be able to continue on, but not deal with some of the issues that we were dealing with.
Sure.
We had a customer concentration issue.
Yep.
And this would alleviate that customer concentration issue. So time to take a chip off the table.
Sure.
So I didn't really fill Bill in on this stuff. I kind of wanted to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And then I brought Bill into the picture and said, hey, I got somebody who's interested in buying us. Here's the deal. And, I don't blame Bill for this. I can actually understand it completely. He's like, I don't want to be sold. And
a little bit of a dilemma here.
yeah, and I certainly don't want to move to Chicago.
Right.
And I said, hey, listen, we don't have to go to Chicago. I already talked about that part. I'm not moving to Chicago.
Yeah.
You don't have to move to Chicago. But he's like, I still want to do what we're doing. And so we actually had quite a few meetings with Chris.
Yeah.
Chris was sort of our mediator.
Yeah.
And we drug him into a bunch of conversations, and it really turned out to be irreconcilable as far as Bill didn't want to leave. So I went back to Brian and said, hey, Brian, I know we talked about the whole thing, but how about half? You want half the company?
Right. Yeah.
And Brian's like, I'd rather have half than the whole thing.
Okay.
So at that point, I could go back to Bill and say, hey, Bill, we're not going to sell the company, but I'm leaving.
Yes.
And he's like, well, I don't really want you to leave either. And I said, so we had a long conversation, and what we structured was a divorce.
Yeah, that's wow.
Amongst business partners.
Amongst business partners, right?
Yeah, so we were able.
And long relationship, 16
Yeah.
years. It's a long time.
Well, Bill and I had known each other since 1995 because we had done orientation at a company called New Resources in Chicago.
Yeah.
Together in November of 1995, and that's where we met. The first
So
day
you've known
for
a long
both
time.
of us, right? And that's how we became friends and
Yeah.
family friends. And even to this day, Bill's a great guy, right?
Yeah.
We still talk. A lot of people ask me how Bright Skies is doing.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Right.
Bill and I don't talk about it, but
About the business.
about the business side.
Yeah.
But I still talk to a lot of the people there, and Bright Skies is still out there, still kicking.
So go back. So you said you and Bill end up saying, look, okay, we got to get a divorce because we're kind of stuck. So now you're hit by, what's interesting enough, you're hit by like another one of the 5 Ds now, right? So
Yeah.
You got your health issue, but now you got like a little bit of a disagreement with your partner that now kind of, now we got to get a divorce because we want 2 totally different things.
We do. We want totally different things.
Yeah.
And so the divorce negotiations were
Yeah, I can imagine.
just like every divorce
Yeah.
negotiation goes
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
There's a lot of arm wrestling that
Yeah.
goes along, but we were able to leave Bright Skies for him.
Yep.
It had actually protected Bright Skies. I mean, one of the things that I really needed to do was de-risk us. So
Yeah.
a nice exit planning
Yeah,
thing is we had
right.
to de-risk. And as part of that de-risking was to lose this customer concentration.
Yep.
We really had to get that done. And the only way was for me to leave and take that customer with me.
Oh.
Because it wasn't a customer concentration issue for Gorilla Group.
Right. Okay.
So, and it was a little interesting at that time. There was a gentleman at that customer that really was intent on reducing the amount of outside services since we were a service company.
Yeah.
So that was another little wrench in the situation. And going back to where you said, where did EO come in?
Yeah. Right.
We're sitting in my kitchen one day, and I'm doing my little update presentation,
Yeah.
and I'm explaining. Bill and I are still trying to figure this out. I'm still trying to negotiate the acquisition by Gorilla Group.
Yep.
And my biggest customer, who I'm taking with me, is telling me we might cut back.
Oh, no. It's like, jeez.
And so the question that they asked were, well, what do you think the chances are of getting this deal done? And I said, man, honestly, like 1%.
Oh, no.
1%. And I go, but I'm going to get it done because
Yeah.
when push comes to shove,
Yeah.
they gave me the kick in the shorts that I needed to do it. And then another gentleman who I met from EO, Jerry Mosley, probably one of my best friends in the world.
Yeah.
Luckily, we happened to be in Turks and Caicos on vacation with families together
Yeah.
when a lot of this stuff started to hit the fan.
Right.
And it was nice being out of town, not being able to respond,
Yeah.
being able to absorb it, talk to Jerry, and then deal with the situation.
Right.
So this EO has been tied into
Yeah, it's
the
another
whole
great
time.
example of how it's influenced your
Completely.
journey as a business owner. So we hear this one a lot too on the show, where we hear this in our exit planning space too. Being a local company as well, when you leave, so you eventually exit.
Yep.
Do you see like any of your employees in the grocery store kind of thing, where they're like, "Mike, what happened? Where'd you go, man?"
Well, the good news was I took half my employees with me.
Oh, right. So did you go over to you went over to the Gorilla Group? Or
I
what?
went over to the Gorilla Group. I had
Okay.
a 3-year contract.
Yep.
Half the employees went. A couple clients went. So
Yeah.
I left some dear friends and coworkers behind.
sure. Naturally, yeah.
So that was the hard part. I never forget standing up at a company meeting and dropping the bomb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Hey,
like I'm leaving.
Oh, yeah, I'm leaving, and some of your brothers and sisters are leaving
yeah,
too.
That's true. Yeah, that's tough.
And I'll never forget the look and the shock on faces and the questions that I took because I took it as a town hall.
Oh, jeez.
I said,
ballsy, man.
ask me anything you want,
Yeah.
and I will share anything
But
I
honest,
can.
I like that though. I mean, it takes guts to stand up there in front of your 40 or 50 people.
I
and do
wish
that.
we had it recorded. I like
Yeah, so you
now
could
in
revert
hindsight.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in hindsight, it's 8 years later.
Yeah.
I wish we had it recorded because it would
I
be
know.
kind of cool to see. But
See back then, yeah. So you get through the Gorilla Group stuff too. So now fast forward with me to 2019. you become a certified exit planning advisor, right?
Yep.
So you come to Chicago, probably is where you went?
Arizona.
Oh, you went to the Scottsdale program.
The Scottsdale program.
That's old school, man. That's
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually not that long ago, 2019, but the whole COVID shift has obviously propelled and changed our business. But you come to the SEPA program, and I remember Dad telling me, hey, Mike's going to come to the program. And I said, I remember thinking, like, what an interesting thing, because 99.9%, certainly back then, of the members of the people becoming SEPAs were professional advisors. And I was like, oh, this is going to be really cool and maybe even humbling for us to have an owner critique our education. Like, man, that's not going to work, or that's not how we think about it. So do you remember learning from, now you've been exposed to Dad's stuff before.
Right.
But sitting in that room with other, now, as probably the only owner in the room.
I was the only owner in the room.
Right? What was that experience like for you?
So first of all, I ended up there because your dad kept bugging me.
I remember he said, like, look, you would make
could
a
do
really
this.
good,
You would make a great SEPA quarterback.
Yeah, you would.
And so after the book launch, after I read it, I loved the material, and he's like, well, you gotta do the program.
Right.
I was kind of hoping he'd offer it for me free, but I actually paid for it.
Yeah, you did.
I flew out to Arizona, and it was amazing for me to sit through as a business owner. And I was talking to Jim Smith this morning a little bit about, but what I said about the book, the process, is that business owners need to see this because we don't know. Right?
Yeah, you don't. No.
Whenever I talk to a friend of mine or a business owner now about, hey, when are you thinking about leaving, stepping aside? What's your exit? It's kind of funny because it's always a numeric answer. It's an age.
Yeah.
It's a number of years. It's a revenue number.
Yeah.
It's an EBITDA number.
Yep.
It's always a numeric.
Yeah, it is. I totally
understand. And what I learned is no one knows what their company's worth if they haven't planned for it. I certainly didn't.
Right.
Like we were like, 1x revenue is our starting point. We don't know where that goes. So I think every business owner should go to it.
Yeah.
And anybody who is a service provider to entrepreneurs, business owners, as I told Jim this morning, they should go to it.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to talk to entrepreneurs. And going back to Arizona, 2019, SEPA program, being the only entrepreneur room, I listened to people, I watched them dress, and it was weird little things as far as, hey, if you're going to talk to an entrepreneur business owner, don't wear a suit because none of them do. If you look like an investment banker or somebody at a bank, they're not going to relate to you very much.
Interesting.
And
were people like pinging you with questions? Because once they found out, right, like day 2, day 3, when you went to the socials and had some dinners now at the hotel, and they're like, oh, this guy's one of Chris's friends and an owner. They had to kind of...
I became very popular. It was very flattering. It was kind of fun. And a lot of people were picking my brain.
Yeah.
And we did a couple breakout sessions where we talked about, there was a company issue where we had to talk about how to grow this company. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the attendees, they're like, well, we'll just hire more salespeople.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And I said, well, have you ever hired salespeople?
Right. Probably not.
And the answer was no.
No. Right.
And I said, well, salespeople do not guarantee that you are going to grow profitable revenue.
Exactly right.
And
profitable revenue.
Profitable revenue, right.
Profitable revenue.
Revenue they might handle, but it doesn't mean you're going to make any money on the deal. Yeah. So it was kind of a celebrity status kind of deal. It's one of my favorites of things that I've attended.
Yeah, cool.
And then as some of the presenters I was talking to, one gentleman had every designation after his last name.
Yeah,
like he was SEPA, CFA, whatever.
All of them.
And I was like, I probably would never talk to you.
So like intimidating to you or what? It's like, it's just like, what's going on here?
You have too many letters after your name.
Yeah.
I don't, as a business owner, I don't care about letters.
Yeah.
And most entrepreneurs don't care about letters or titles.
Yeah.
I call myself chief cook and bottle washer.
Yeah.
And I never had a title on my card.
Yeah.
It never said founder. It never said anything.
Interesting.
And typically when you see that many designations, they're trying to impress someone, and it's a makeup for something else.
Interesting.
And so I kind of gave him that advice.
Yeah.
Right? I said, listen, I would rather have you come in with nothing, and then we talk.
Well, have a conversation.
Than you try to tell me how great you are.
Exactly right.
And so the dynamics were very weird for me back then.
Yeah.
But it was so cool.
Yeah, I would assume, and really cool to see again, because you guys are kind of going through the methodology, you and Bill, when Dad took you through that assessment, right? So you kind of, again, were exposed to it from a process
and we were
execution.
familiar with Vern Harnish.
Yeah, you were very Vern stuff.
We were very Vern stuff.
That's
so
heavy influence
Mastering
for
the
Dad.
Rockefeller Habits, even before
So
Scaling Up came out.
Yeah.
So we were in, and EO brought us a lot of that stuff.
That's true too, right?
But we didn't get everything.
Right.
And I think that, the going through the process, right? We didn't follow the process as well as we should have.
Yeah.
And I wish we would have known some of the process, to do the evaluation every year. What are we going to do? We're going to continue to grow, de-risk, or are we going to sell?
Exactly.
Grow, de-risk, sell. How are we going to get better?
Yeah.
We kind of did it, but we didn't do it.
Yeah, right. So we're at the already at the top of the hour. So
good.
I want a perfect segue. I don't know if you saw the clock too, but I think now, 24 years now of being an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Having your own, obviously, pretty wild story and journey in your own company, working with other companies, and then coming through the SEPA program. What kind of lessons learned? If you had to tell Mike year 2000 and running the company with all the knowledge and experience that you have now, what would you have told him? Is it similar to what you were just kind of alluding to? Let's get a rhythm where, it's a value acceleration centric lifestyle. It's not just about growing the business. It's about how it relates to value, or maybe you have more heavily influenced in the personal planning side of things.
Well, there's lots of lessons, right? And
Sure,
I love how you caveat it. It says if you can go back knowing what you know now, and the joke is I don't think we could ever go back knowing what we know now.
Yeah, right.
But going forward, is enjoy the ride more. In retrospect, I enjoyed the ride, right? I was super lucky to have great friends and great mentors, whether it was through EO, whether it was through COSI, whether it was meeting Jim Smith, Mike Neendorfer, Chris Snider, et cetera, right? They were instrumental in my growth. And so I would say surround myself with mentors earlier.
Interesting.
Because
totally
I was do-it-myself kind of guy. And figure it out, make your mistakes. I didn't embrace that as early as I should have. People are number one. Whether they're a customer or your team members, people are number one. You treat them the best you can. Luckily, my parents had ingrained that in me, so I did it by default, but not everybody does.
I agree with that, too. I
would say a lot of early business owners, and it doesn't matter their age, but just their experience level, they fall in love with revenue. The revenue growth, you talk to a lot of early entrepreneurs, business owners, people in school, professors, everybody wants to talk about revenue growth. But profit is probably the way to drive it. Profit profit by employee, profit by X. Because if you're not making money, unless you have some bigger end, right? You can't afford to lose millions of, tens of millions of dollars. So, those were the big things, right? Now, I didn't know anything about finance or accounting or financials when I came in. So one of the things I tell every college student is, hey, make sure you take at least a couple accounting classes, a couple finance classes. I have a 15-year-old son, and anybody who has had or has or will have teenagers. My early days of business was like a teenager. I wouldn't listen to people because I had to do it myself. I thought I knew better.
Of course.
But I didn't. And so now, all these years later, listening to people, taking that advice, learning from their mistakes, don't do it the hard way, do it the easy way. And, that's what my son's kind of doing. He's taking a similar track that you took. He's kind of we started a mulching business at
mulching. You were telling me the other night.
Mighty mulchers, an 8th grader.
Mighty mulchers?
Yeah, they're small, but they're mighty.
That. Small but mighty.
And, but he's taking an accounting class his sophomore year in high school next year. And he likes the business classes.
I didn't have any exposure to that in high school when I was running my business. I remember I went to St. Ed's, right? All boys private school. And my freshman year, they actually took away the business classes. So they used to do like a basic economics class in high school. But I had none of that. So it's cool to see Bruno making that happen.
And he probably wouldn't do it on his own. He'd probably be in woodshop too, which there's nothing wrong with that. But he decided to take accounting. And public speaking. He's not quite into that one yet.
Interesting.
And so I would say a lot of things that entrepreneurs need are not around, the blocking and tackling. You need some accounting, but I say most entrepreneurs need to be able to communicate sales.
Yes.
Unless you're coming up with a product that no one has.
Yes.
And for parents out there who think that their kids may want to someday do something similar,
yeah,
I think shadowing is the greatest thing that they could do. I have a friend of mine's daughter, Claire, who her family is all in. They're firemen, nurses, doctors, so they're all in the healthcare world. And she came to me a couple years ago and said, "Hey, Mike, I don't have anybody who could help me make choices. Can you mentor me?" And she's been amazing. Her senior year at Olmsted Falls, I drug her to wealth management companies. I took her down the riverside. And she got to go to conferences with adults to see what they're like.
Different, right? Yeah.
And adults from different things. So it's very nice to see her go through this process and learn.
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I remember 2011 going to the first EPI conference, right? Because I went to a bunch of landscaping conferences, kind of like good old boys, right? I mean, and you come to a professionalized conference like that, and when they're talking about exit, wealth management, investment banking, that was.
You weren't wearing your khakis and your green polo shirt.
I was in a suit and tie and very, very formalized. The story goes, and we've told this on the show before. It's one of the funny early EPI stories. We weren't owners of EPI yet.
Right.
Dad was a member. He was the chair of the conference. All that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I had sold and exited M&S Connection Landscaping. He's like, "Come with me to this conference so I can give you some more exposure," kind of like what you're saying.
Yep.
And I couldn't believe how heavily everybody drank and then operated the next day. I was like, they're drinking wine at dinner. They're drinking cocktails.
Afterwards.
They went out. They did an after-dinner drink. And so Dad was leaving to go kick off this conference. Me and him were sharing a room back in the day, right? So we had two queens in there.
You still share, don't you?
Yeah. No, I mean, we did recently, actually, and it was blast from the past. But typically, Dad likes his own space these days. And so he said, look, he literally pulled my toe from the bed. And I woke up, and I'm like, "Dude, it's time already. Why don't you wake me up?" He's like, "You don't have to wake up now, but you will be down there by the time the conference kicks off." And so, of course, I get down there in the last minute, roll out of bed, put on my suit and tie, and he's talking to a couple guys, and I enter the little networking group that he's in, and they all look at me, and Dad looks at me, and he goes, "Dude, did you shower this morning?" I was like, "No, I came down. You told me to be down here right now." He's like, "Dude,
go shower.
Get upstairs, go shower, re-put on your suit, and get back down here." So that was my first exposure. Now I'm leading EPI. That was my first exposure to EPI. But I like the mentorship. I like the early conferences. I learned a lot once we kind of got integrated. Learned a lot at those conferences, and a lot of mentors along the way. So we are at the top of the hour, Mike. So
you said that already. We've already passed the top.
We did top. We passed.
We got top. It's like final.
Top of the hour. They're cutting me off. So, Mike, I really appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us the last couple days, and certainly coming in and sharing your knowledge as a business owner. I really appreciate you coming in.
My pleasure to have me.
So subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
See you next time, guys.